I tell you all this because it has a pertinent bearing on one of our national wealths or characteristics, and hence on our importance in the world. It is our character. We love freedom, we honor it, and we will go to unusual lengths to preserve it. The last World War will testify to this, of the part that the Serbians played, in so much as that we lost some particular, but somewhere between 27 or more % of the total number of our people. An expensive price to pay, you may say. Indeed it was, especially expensive when one considers what was gained in return. However, I am certain that the same price would be paid again if the reward would be truly be that of freedom. As you know, in 1945, no sooner was one oppressive system removed than another, communism, took its place and is still so terribly firmly entrenched. Nevertheless, this horrible system has had to pay an exceedingly high price. You will remember that at the end of the war, Stalin was in power and had recently extended his influence over a huge additional area known today as Eastern Europe. He had every reason to feel politically stronger and securer than ever before. He was flushed with the sense of victory, a victory that had cost many thousands of lives of the best sons, of the very best of our sons and daughters, and a huge quantity of material, without which it is certain that the Russian offensive would have been greatly protracted. It is in no way denies the terrible cost of human life that was suffered by either the Red Army or, and particularly the Russian people, nor for that matter by those suffered by the enemy themselves. Another victory that they also then won was not fought on the battlefields, but rather round the conference tables in cities such as Yalta and Tehran, whose names will go down in history to the lasting shame of freedom and the democratic world. A victory that cost not a single bullet and yet has cost as much misery, pain and death as any conflict in history. This victory for communism was the defeat of freedom for many nations and many people: Poles, Czechs, Romanians, Bulgarians, Hungarians, and my own people, the Yugoslavs. In the case of Yugoslavia, this victory backfired on Stalin, when in 1948 Tito broke with him. It must well be understood that this break occurred for very pragmatic reasons and had nothing to do with the dislike of the communistic system. It was that if internal policies of Stalin were to be imposed upon the people of Yugoslavia, there would certainly have to be serious internal troubles. The causes of these troubles would have been the threat to what was always and always had been regarded as the right of certain basic freedoms. So great was this internal unrest calculated to be at that time, that the risk of external intervention by the Russians was calculated as being less likely. One must also remember that at this time it was not a foregone conclusion that Tito could have maintained his hold in the face of such a popular uprising. Furthermore, there had been no example whatsoever of the negative reactions on the part of the West to any Russian intervention. No one in the Eastern Bloc had any idea how the West might react to such interventions, but this was not known until the Hungarian and the Czech incidences had taken place some years later. While in the meantime, Russia had made up most of the differences in its military power between itself and the Western democratic blocs. This latter was certainly not lost either on the Russians, or on Tito himself. The odds, therefore, were in favor of Tito. From this you will have seen an unbroken thread leading from national and traditional wealth, in this case the love of freedom, to a factor of political importance, not only for the Western powers, but also for the East. I think we must clearly understand that despite the break in 1948 with Russia, Yugoslavia, with its banner-waving leading role in non-alignment, is still, and until it changes, is a communist state. You will hear the view that it is a mild form of communism. This is very clever but false in its very, very basic premise. To outsiders it may appear as a benign form of an oppressive system and one lacking the horrors of any Gulag archipelagos. This could well be because there are few who know of a place that is called Goli Otok, where the atrocities have been committed that would compete with those of the Nazi death camps, and indeed exceed them in most cases. This after a period at the end of World War II, when many thousands of former prisoners of war in Germany were herded back over their frontiers in cattle trucks to be greeted by machine guns and huge mass graves. Gilas, the writer and once right-hand man of Tito himself, writes about this perfectly openly. The official comment, however, is that the authorities did not know what to do with these poor people who were sent back against their will by their former allies. That is a terribly sad state when one thinks that it was partially the responsibility of those people for whom they had so bravely fought. Now one asks, how different then is this brand of communism to any other? The answer must surely be none whatsoever. There is another factor that has recently been the subject of much interest and concern in Yugoslavia's huge international debt. Have you seen, because of the break with Moscow, Yugoslavia became a point of great political interest to the West. It was a point not to be missed by anyone. Support from the West came pouring in vast amounts. One of the ironies is that with every Western dollar that was sent there, one Eastern dollar was free to pay for the development of another ghastly weapon to one day fight the West. This is of course important, and because it concerns Yugoslavia among other such recipients of financial aid, it makes the country important. But besides which, ask any banker, 27 to 30 billion dollars important it was, and is. Purely strategically, the importance of Yugoslavia lies in its geographical position. Historically, this has been shown to be true, and today it is undoubtedly equally true. Because all of you are well aware of this fact, I will not dwell on it very much more. And I hope that with a little bit of the background that I have mentioned here, that I have managed to pique your interest, as I have said in the start. And now I must, before I conclude my stage setting, point out something that, because it is